Hello, my name is Caitlin Saltzman, and this is my debate video on the Homo Naledi and the Rising Star Cave, and if it was a burial or not. And personally, I believe that it was not a burial, and here are the reasons why I think that. So my first argument for why it could have not been a burial is just the location of the cave in general. It just so happens to be right in between the African plate and the Somalian plate. Now, when a cave is in between two tectonic plates or nearby that intersection, it can lead to more rapid developments of the cave. Earthquakes, obviously. So things like this can cause huge cave-ins over time. It has been hundreds of thousands of years since Homo naledi was in this cave, if they were. There could have been a cave-in. There could have been so many other things that close passageways to this cave that can totally affect our ability to research it, especially since it's right near the in between of those tectonic plates. There is so much more seismic activity and movement and shifting and things like that. So, the probability that that cave is not what it's like now, when it, compared to how it was back then, is very high. So now I'm going to be getting into some of my possible theories for how they could have gotten into the cave. Now, this one I honestly think is one of the least likely scenarios. I still think it is more likely than it being a burial, just because, I just really don't think that it was. But, the first theory is that predators carried Homo naledi into this cave back then. And the predators were living there, and they would bring them in there and eat them, and now there's a bunch of bones. There is evidence that ancient hominins were hunted by predators, especially in Africa, particularly hyenas, which are small enough to get into small cracks of the cave, are typically very ferocious hunters, very fast hunters. And so, it is honestly a probability that this has happened, but on those skeletons, they did not find any evidence of teeth marks or dragging or anything like that. And so while it doesn't entirely rule out the possibility, just because we weren't there and we don't know, it does make it less likely that it was predators, just because there's no discernible evidence of it. So personally, what I think is the most likely theory that happened to the Homo naledi and how they got in the cave is that they were either running from something or wandered in there and ended up getting stuck and, dying in there. And so, it could have been a storm, like a hurricane, or just a really bad thunderstorm. It could have been enough to scare them to go into this shelter that they found in the cave, because they weren't building shelters back then, obviously. And so they go into this makeshift shelter that they just found, and then they end up getting stuck because they went too deep, and they either don't know how to get out or just can't and don't have the strength to pull themselves up out of that, out of the Naledi chamber. And so that is very likely. Or, as I said, there is evidence of us being hunted by predators in the past, especially in Africa. Things like hyenas and lions. They were very common back then, and they could have chased the Homo naledi into this cave, and then they ended up getting stuck in there. So that could have happened. Or what I personally think is that they were just curious. They wanted to know what was deep inside of this cave, and they flew a little too close to the sun, I guess a little too far away from the sun, and got stuck in there and were never able to get out and just ended up slowly dying over time, So yeah, that's honestly what I think had happened. And, hominins are known for being curious and things like that. So this really does make the most sense. And lastly, I believe that Dr. Lee Berger made a few crucial mistakes while publishing his articles and filming the documentary, The Cave of Bones. First of all, the project was extremely rushed, and they were pretty much publishing articles and had already had most of the documentary filmed before they were even asking people to do peer reviews. They also kind of twisted the words on those peer reviews a little bit as well, which is very unethical. They brought fire into the cave, which is going to mess up any kind of carbon dating, and just a lot of things like that that imply that he was really trying to do this for media purposes, and that he wanted it to be a big Netflix thing and everyone to be talking about it, and he, just wanted it to be what he wanted it to be. And instead, it was like, you know, he should have been just doing it for the purpose of research and understanding what happened in our past and not trying to become famous for making this crazy discovery. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time.